Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bleeding Priest Bay Area Metal Spotlight. And for this edition, I'm going to be talking about a band that really fascinates me. The musical trajectory of this band's career just blows me away. They sounded different on every single album they put out, at least in the early days. This band is Hexx. They hail from the East Bay, I think from Point Richmond, or the Richmond area. I don't know that for certain, but I think they're from Point Richmond, which is kind of like the nicer part, fancier part of Richmond, California. Again, don't quote me on that. But these guys were sick. They played lots of local shows. I actually only got to see them a couple times. They didn't play San Francisco too often. One time I remember seeing them at the Omni with Sadis, and they fit perfectly with Sadis around this era of the band. But let's talk about their career. They started I think they formed in the late 70s, like in 79. But when their first album came out, it was 83, 84. That album's called No Escape, and it came out on Shrapnel Records. And at the time, they were a total U.S. power metal, speed metal kind of band. And they didn't really fit the mold of Shrapnel Records, though, because Shrapnel is known for guitar virtuosos and like solo albums by guitar virtuosos and drummers, like, drum masters and stuff. And everyone's look at me on their instrument, like everyone's just going off. And I'm not putting it down. I love Shrapnel Records and I love those albums, but these guys didn't really fit that mold. They were more of like a real band. And although their guitarists were killer, they weren't quite the shredding type of guitarists you'd hear on Shrapnel. And Shrapnel wasn't known for putting out real band albums. It was usually solo stuff. But so these guys, their first album came out on Shrapnel, and their image was totally fit the part of the time. They were in spandex, and it was a full-on early 80s power metal sound and look. And then 2 years later, they put out their next album, Under the Spell, and the changes from record to record are phenomenal. Like, you wouldn't even know it's the same band, pretty much. The second album is definitely more in the vein of thrash and not speed metal. And if you don't know the difference between thrash and speed metal, then you shouldn't be on the site. But yeah, the second album it still has like some traditional heavy metal qualities to it, but definitely more into the vein of thrash metal, Bay Area thrash. And then a year or so after that, they put this EP out, Quest for Sanity, and this is my favorite era of the band. On here, they've gone full-blown into thrash metal, and not just like regular normal thrash metal, like brutal thrash metal, borderline death metal. Like, this is like, they're like one of the early examples of death thrash. And they played lots of shows with Sadis, and they fit perfectly with them. Those two bands were two of a kind for sure. Like, and they played together a lot. Like I said, I only saw them a few times, Hexx, at the Omni, and then once at the Stone, I saw them opening for someone. I can't remember who. They played with Rude Awakening, I think, in some touring band. But anyways, this shit's great right here. If you like death thrash, or the origins of, you should check this out. And they even put another album out after this called Morbid Reality, which is full-on death metal. They went all the way. But of all the bands in the Bay Area metal scene, I can't think of a band that made such a transformation in such a short amount of time. And I'm not talking about demos. A lot of bands put out demos every year, and we would completely change their sound. These guys are putting out fucking records, for Christ's sake. And it's like you don't even recognize them from album to album. And I've read that there's a division amongst Hexx fans who like prefer the earlier stuff, the more traditional heavy metal stuff, over the death thrash stuff, and vice versa. And when I saw them, it was during this era, so that's the stuff I was familiar with. They're very fast, brutal thrash. And then years later, I heard their earlier albums, and I gotta say, I didn't like them at all. I was like, what the fuck is this? But I've grown to dig it now. I love their early stuff too. But it definitely threw a curveball my way when I heard it at the time. I'm like, man, this is not for me. I want to hear the later stuff. But yeah, these guys are killer. I believe they're still around. They put out a full length in, I think, 2017 maybe. And they're still playing shows in Europe. Death Angel were in Europe a few years ago. And I know they were out there at the same time because I was seeing their name on festival posters and stuff. And that's awesome. This release is pretty curious. I bought it at this record store called Force of Habit that was in the Mission in San Francisco. It's not there anymore, unfortunately. Really cool store. But the guy who owned the shop wasn't much of a metalhead, and I don't think he knew what he had because, yes, this is the EP, but it also comes with the Watery Graves 12-inch. And I don't think he knew this was in there because the price was pretty low on this record. So when I came home, I was like, score! I was like, fucking bonus. And this is the shit right here. This is when they were going full-on death metal. And I think there's even a couple of songs on the B-side that are re-recordings of the more heavy metal stuff, but done in a more thrash, deathy style. But yeah, this is definitely a bonus for me. I'm not sure if it was meant to be in here. This was put out by Wild Rags Records, which was a pretty popular label in the late 80s, early 90s for underground thrash. I think they even put something out for Epidemic, maybe. But they definitely put out lots of demo-level band stuff on vinyl and just really, really underground killer stuff. But yeah, so whether this was meant to be inside the EP, I have no idea, or if this was like its own independent release. Kind of curious. It's just like a flap, like a fold. So I can't imagine this being sold by itself, just like this. I mean, I wouldn't buy something that was this cheap, you know. But as an extra disc in an EP, fuck yeah. So, anyways, check out Hexx. And it depends on what mood you're in, what era of Hexx you want to listen to. You can't just blindly dive in with this band. If you want to hear more traditional power metal stuff, you listen to the early stuff, or if you want more brutal, aggressive stuff, their later stuff. So I'll let you be the judge of that. It's all good, though. And yeah, see you next week.